take point here on this one. It's my face. We're here. It's Fantasy Football Week 4. All right. Welcome to Weekly Buy Tiers. It's myself, Jackson, and Grant. We're running you through our favorite plays, so let's get dialed in here. So the Smash tier, the guys that we are absolutely obsessed with. What are we looking at this week? So for me, the tier 1 guy that I like is Jordan Mason. Very obsessed with the play. They're projected to win by about like 8 points or so here. Low scoring game environment. I expect it to be ran through the run quite a bit here. You still have no Deebo Samuel. McCaffrey looks like he's a ways away, so I want to be taking my stance away from him. Breece Hall looks to be the guy for Grant, so I'll let him explain that, but I'm very curious to hear about Brian Robinson for Jackson here. Putting him all the way in tier 1 seems like a strong stance.
Yeah, I'm blessing the community, giving them my elite tier being BR, but...
Let's walk it through it.
As
all
far
right,
as
which one do you want to go
goes,
first?
I think that the game script in this one should be positive. The Jets have had some favorable matchups recently, and they've tended to blow teams out of the water a little bit, and that should lead to a lot of volume for him. I suppose you could see some Braylon Allen work on the ground as well, but this feels like a big spot for Breece. And the Broncos are going to be without their leading tackler from last season and so far this season who tore his ACL in last week's game. Definitely a good run stopper, Alex Singleton. So I believe Breece should be in a great spot here. I don't know if the Broncos are going to be able to turn around quick enough without their leader on defense.
Right on.
Yeah, maybe Brian Robinson Jr. doesn't belong in the elite tier, but if anything, that's just...
Talk your talk. Why should he be elite?
Okay, so it seems super simple to me. It's like he scored a touchdown in 2 of 3 games this season. Eckler was taking up some usage, and he's going to be gone. They're going up against the Cardinals, who are the worst rush defense in the league. Enormous points total this game. Commanders getting the red zone more than anybody in the league. I just feel like he's so due for, I think the only reason he didn't break his projection last game was because he did have to end up having to split a little bit of that usage with Eckler, which isn't going to be here this time. So I just think it's going to be doors wide open for BR.
I like the plays. And another positive for me, Rob, highest projected scoring game environment, which is also awesome. So moving on to the next, we got the receivers here, the absolute dogs. What are we looking at here for the receivers? I like Nico against this Jag spot. Divisional matchup, higher scoring environment. I'm not impressed by the Jags secondary at all. I want to be taking as many swings on these receivers. Dell will likely not be playing, so I'm expecting a big Nico game. Now we got Maserati Marv and Big Mike. What should we be expecting from these two dogs?
I just think Marv's going to cook this Commanders secondary. They've been awful. Commanders offense took a big step last week, and that's the reason they won the game, obviously. But Jamar had a massive game. They've given up huge games to every team they've played so far, and this feels like a spot for the true number 1 wide receiver in Arizona to continue the progress he's made in these last couple weeks. And I think he should be somewhere around the 19-20 point region this game.
I know. All right, yeah. Big Mike, what do we got there?
He obviously hasn't looked like much of an elite, or at least the elite receiver that he is or has been in past seasons so far, just because he's been getting pretty stuffed through the first 3 games. But I think here he should see some room to work with. Todd Bowles said he needs to get Evans more involved. I don't think he's going to be getting shadowed here against the Eagles secondary, allowing the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And the Eagles absolutely suck against the slot. And funny enough, Evans runs 35% of his routes from the slot. So I think this is a big Evans week.
Right on. Love that. All right. Moving on to the next one here. We got the tight end. So it's a bit difficult to pick out what the elite tight ends are, but this is what we think they are for this week. So for me, Jake Ferguson, and you're going to see a similar theme with one of my later picks, but I think one of these two guys pops in this matchup. I like Jake Ferguson. He's one of them. He got high usage last week. You can point that towards them being just playing from behind, but I think it's more sticky than that. So I'm willing to ride the high this week with Jake Ferguson. Goddard, Kittle, walk us through it.
Yeah, Goddard's is really the only target left that has received significant reps with Jalen Hurts in the past. The only primary target that is back from last year there. Obviously, I don't expect Devontae Smith to play this week, and A.J. Brown will definitely not be playing. Kind of a square play. I think a lot of people are going to be in on Dallas Goedert this week, but he should be in for another 10 target game. In the market of tight ends, there's nothing crazy right now, so he jumps off the page as a guy that can get it going for sure.
Yeah, like well said, it's kind of the tight end market is kind of unforgiving right now. Zach Ertz has been a little bit of a bright spot, I would say, in what has otherwise been disappointing tight end season so far. He had 5 receptions on 5 targets last game.
Zach Ertz or George Kittle? By the way, I put
Did I
George
say
Kittle
Kit?
here for yeah. You
Sorry, I was doing my second
next
tier one
year.
for
You're all
whatever
good.
reason. Yeah. Okay. So Kittle, yeah, his projection is just insane on PredictionStrike right now. And if that stays, that is going to be such a smash. It's like 5.6 fantasy points, I think, right now on PS, which is obviously, I think he's like 80% trending towards playing. Great game script here with the matchup. I just think it's an easy elite spot if Kittle does end up playing.
Love that. Love that. And forewarning, if you are investing on Prediction Strike, the projection may change ahead of game time, so
For
keep
sure.
your eye on that. And now is a perfect time to remind you guys to subscribe if you haven't already. Help us get to our goal of 1,000 subscribers before the end of October. Should be easy for us to hit here with all of you basic people coming back and hanging out with us, but want to get that out there. All right. On to the next thing. So where do we kind of stand against the market a little with some of these kind of medium tier plays that we think could ultimately be smashes? Now, medium tier is dependent upon your personal belief, but I decided to go with James Conner. You can argue that he's basically a tier 1 guy, but after last week, I've seen a lot of people kind of turn their heels rather quickly. So just like Jackson's love of Brian Robinson in that matchup, I love James Conner there. Bell cow type of usage is what we should be expecting. High scoring game environment. Those are all factors that check my box. Bad defense. Moo la la. All right. Jerome Ford, Devin Singletary. What should we be looking for out of these two?
Yeah, I haven't been the biggest Jerome Ford fan this season, but the Raiders really struggled marking running backs in the passing game last week. We saw Chuba Hubbard was in like the mid 20-point range.
Are you just trying to jinx your Raiders here? Just out of curiosity, just like if I pick Jerome Ford and he ends up being terrible somehow, that means the Raiders are going to just be dominant, right?
No. I'm trying to lose as many games as I can the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Chuba had great success on the ground as well, and Ford fits that kind of profile to me. I don't think Deontay Foreman's going to have a ton of success. The Raiders bottled up guys like Gus Edwards and stuff in the past, and Deontay fits more of that mold to me. And Jerome Ford is more similar to like a J.K. Dobbins or Chuba, who had a ton of success against us in the past. So this feels like a spot for a little bit of a bounce back, especially if these comments about the Browns trying to emphasize the run game, even with Deshaun and stuff. So a full ground attack would be good for Jerome Ford this week.
Totally. And I will say, I had Jerome Ford last week, and the run got absolutely stuffed up. But I mean, the theory was kind of correct in that Foreman only saw 2 carries the whole game, so they might be moving back out of that, which I feel like bodes well for Ford. Singletary, it's just a super simple pick. I think all 3 of us are pretty big on Singletary here in this spot against the Cowboys, who are the worst against the rush in the league. Which I feel like is kind of surprising to a lot of people. Singletary scored a rushing touchdown in each of his last 2 games, gets a good amount of receptions against bad defenses, and his prediction strikes obviously PPR. So like Singletary here, seems like a pretty simple play to me.
Right on. Love it. Moving on to the next tier, we got the receivers. So we got George Pickens to start off with me. I just like targeting this Colts secondary. I want to take as many shots as possible. I think this could be a sneaky game. I'm not expecting a lot of scoring, unfortunately, but I like the usage. I like targeting a bad secondary. So I'm rocking with George this week. Give me GP all day. Now, Khalil Shakir and DJ Moore, what should we expect out of them, respectively?
Yeah, I don't think this is the greatest matchup necessarily for Khalil Shakir, but it's more of just a situational thing where I feel like he's established himself as the number 1 in that offense, and I feel like he builds upon some success he had last week. It seems like they found some good ways to get him open and scheme him open, so I'm a big fan of Shakir this week, regardless of the matchup.
Yeah, I just think we're going to have a better week relative to the most game scripts we're going to see for DJ Moore here against the Rams, who are the worst pass defense in the league. They're super banged up. Caleb Williams should be able to see a little bit more time in the pocket. Passing this week, we saw him we saw DJ Moore get 8 receptions last week. And this is a much more positive game script, I would say. I think he's positioned to eat here, like him as a starter.
All righty. Love it. Love it. Moving on to the next one here, the tight ends. All right, so I'm going to explain myself to Taysom Hill. I'm not the biggest fan of the offensive line shift for them, but it does sound like he's going to play this week. So if that happens, I do think he's a key cog in this offensive scheme. I think it's part of why we didn't see as much production last week as well. So I want to be taking my chances on Taysom Hill. I think that Derek Carr is going to be under a lot of pressure. I think they're going to be looking for unique options and should fill in your tight end spot rather nicely. Pause, moving forward. Tyler Conklin, Zach Ertz, explain yourselves.
I like Tyler Conklin for similar reasons as why I like Brees. The Broncos linebacker core is banged up, and this feels like a spot where they can scheme some gaps open in the middle of that field. We haven't seen the Jets receivers have a ton of success. I mean, it's kind of been spread out, and Conklin had a pretty big week last week, especially given the market for tight ends in general. So I'm a big fan with a favorable matchup here for a good possession receiver in Tyler Conklin to have a good game.
All righty. Moving on to the next squad here. We've got.
Oh wait. I already said the Ertz part. Let me just add a little Ertz piece. I think it's a tiny bit contrarian because their tight ends have been pretty much stuffed against the Cardinals so far. I would honestly, and someone was asking me about this earlier, if like the Cardinals are a legit tight end defense. I think it's way too small of a sample size so far. Like when Laporta went up against them, he saw the lowest, I think, route percentage of his entire career. He got 2 targets. Like Dalton Kincaid saw 2 targets. So I think through 3 games, we can't really call AZ a dominant tight end defense. I think Ertz will get plenty of targets.
I like it. All right. Moving on to the next spot here. We've got where do we stand against the market? We're the weird ones in the corner while everyone's dancing, but we're like, these are actually good players. We're starting off with a running back. I like Carson Steele this week. I'm surprised we didn't get Cam Akers back out of Grant, but it is what it is. I like Carson Steele. They expect to be dominant in this game. There's not going to be a lot of Chargers pieces. It is what it is. Not that wild of a Emmanuel Wilson, Justice Hill, explain that.
I like Emmanuel Wilson this week. He seemed to be the guy that was able to kind of spring a hole in that run defense we saw them play last week. He had 12 carries against Tennessee, which has been a good run defense all year. And he turned that into 50 yards rushing, also caught 2 balls for 35 and a touchdown. So definitely kind of a boom week. He might be due for a little bit of a downtrend, I guess, but I still think the volume will be there. His projection hasn't fully caught up to that one big week, so I'm going to take advantage of it while we still can.
All right. Love it. Moving on to the next. Well, Jackson.
Yep. I'm going with Justice Hill, Ravens backup running back. I think it's pretty good game script here. We got a high points total of 46.5. I like Hill's role in the passing game, particularly against Buffalo. They allow some of the most receptions to running backs in the league, have allowed at least 5.7 PPR points to 3 running backs this season on just receiving alone. So, yeah, I think Baltimore's going to be chasing points here. I think they're going to need to work Hill into the passing game. Sneaky good script for him here.
Love it. All right. Next squad, we got the receivers. So Jalen Tolbert is the opposite side of the Jake Ferguson coin. Just kind of looking for one of these 2 to pop. I think that Tolbert could very well be the guy. Darnell Mooney, Lazard, what should we like about them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's just kind of a clear situation in Atlanta right now where Darnell Mooney's kind of being the guy that's being schemed open in a lot of situations. He's found himself open on a lot of deep balls and even some underneath routes, which is super promising. Even just this secondary for the Saints in general. Marshawn Lattimore has been kind of questionable throughout the last couple weeks with an injury, but I think he will play this week, and he's the kind of guy that mirrors a Drake London type receiver in the past. I mean, we've seen him have his battles with Mike Evans, and Drake London is kind of a guy of that similar profile, is super long. And Darnell Mooney feels like kind of the opposite, who's going to be getting a lot of looks against cornerback 2s and isn't going to be kind of the focal point for that defense. So I feel like he's going to find himself open more often than not.
Yeah, Alan Lazard. I mean, this is just kind of PS2 is the only threat in the secondary on Denver. He's going to be on the opposite side of the field, shadowing Garrett Wilson. Not faithful in Mike Williams to really start producing out of nowhere here. Lazard gets the deep looks. I could see it being one of those games where he gets like 3 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown or something.
Love it. All righty. Moving on to the next squad, the final bit, the tight ends. So the reason I like Eric All specifically, is due to the fact. Why is this notification popping up on my screen? Is due to the fact that he's second among tight ends in targets per route run rate. I like that a lot. The snaps went down a little bit this week, but I think they want him to be the focus of the offensive part, the focal point of the tight ends. Forward. Oh, I like him a lot. Classic Mike. But yeah, I just like Eric All, the simplest way to put it. I think he's their focus for tight end in the future. He's from Iowa. Like, big on him.
He should be a lot of fun this week.
How are we walking through these guys?
For Kate Otten, the Eagles in general have succeeded against the smaller, quicker tight ends like the Kyle Pittses of the world. But I feel like they still struggle against more just possession, big body receiving threats like Kate Otten. I think this should be a spot where he should be able to find his way open a lot in the middle of the field. And the Eagles in general, their secondary has looked a lot improved since last year. It still hasn't been great, but it's less of a guaranteed target against the receivers. I still think you can find your spots. Like Mike Evans should nuke this week, but Kate Otten feels like a guy that's going to be available on a lot of third down plays and just kind of find his way open in the middle of the field.
Yeah, Tommy Tremble here. I mean, not tons of great options to choose from here. I just think this is a pretty decent game to maybe get some production out of him. He's projected just over 5 fantasy points, so kind of right where you want him to be, at least where you want kind of any tight end you're investing in to be this season so far. Bengals pass defense, not great. I think he should be able to eat against this team in particular. I love Andy Dalton's passing volume. And Dalton didn't throw too much to Azoma on the Bengals, but he did enjoy throwing to Eifert, Jermaine Gresham. He's going to need more options than Deontay Johnson eventually. Like, I don't see why he doesn't target the big guy a little bit in Tommy T.
Sounds good. Love it. All right. Well, that's all we have for you on this particular one. Nice, short, sweet. Hopefully you like it and it's nice to eat. But yeah, that's really about it. Appreciate you all. Hope you subscribe. And hopefully this is rather helpful. And hopefully I learned to not say the same word about 20 times in a row. So appreciate you all. Talk to y'all later. Have a great day. And of course, enjoy tonight's games. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Peace.